Episode 7. The Rise of Parthia. Just before the revolts in Bactria and Parthia, a nomadic tribe from Central Asia called the Parnai had settled in Parthia. They spoke a form of Persian. They also shared the nomadic culture of the other people who had come before them to the Iranian plateau. The Parnai settled around the city of Asak, near the modern Iranian city of Kuchin. They adopted the local form of Persian spoken in Parthia, and later became known as Parthians. Details about the Parthians are scarce, partly because they left fewer inscriptions than the Achaemenids did. The Parnai set up their own local kingdom, and around 247 BCE Arsaces, or 247 to 217 BC, became the king. He founded the Arsacid dynasty. Its descendants would become the rulers of the Parthian Empire. The Roman historian Justin, 3rd century CE, wrote in his Epitome of the Philippic history that Arsaces was a man of uncertain origin, but of undisputed bravery. The details of his life and rise to power are not clear. But it seems Arsaces led a revolt against the local satrap, who had already begun his own revolt against the Seleucids. Arsaces defeated the satrap. This gave him control over all of Parthia. He then moved west and took control of the neighboring satrap, Hyrcania. For a time, the Seleucids gained the upper hand, forcing Arsaces to flee Parthia. But he regrouped his forces and won back the territory. Under Mithridates I, r. 171 to 138 BCE, Parthia emerged as a true power. Mithridates took the throne in 171 BCE, and within several years had expanded his empire into parts of Bactria. Around 148 BCE, he pushed westward and took Media and then advanced on Babylonia. As his empire grew, however, Mithridates struggled to control it. When nomads struck from the northeast, he had to send troops there to protect his borders. This gave the Seleucids the chance to retake Mesopotamia. Looking back, moving forward. Mithridates died in 138 BCE. His successors would continue to struggle with the same problems he had faced, nomads on one side and the Seleucids on the other. Scythians who were forced out of their lands by Central Asian nomads rampaged across Parthia. At one major battle around 128 BCE they defeated the Parthians. The Seleucids also made one last attempt to regain Babylonia. The Arsacids, however, asserted their control there. They were also finally able to coexist with the Scythians. The Scythians eventually settled in lands near modern-day Pakistan and became known as the Indo-Parthians. In 123 BCE, Mithridates II, or ca 123 to 87 BCE, came to power. He was the first Arsacid king to make a link between his family's rule and the Achaemenids of old. Mithridates took the title Great King, and he left carvings documenting his deeds at Behistun, just as Darius the Great had done for centuries earlier. But Mithridates, and the Arsacids who followed him, never built a strong central government the way Darius and his successors had. Local rulers throughout the Parthian Empire had a great deal of freedom, and nobles had a say in choosing the new kings. Mithridates II strengthened Parthia's rule on both its eastern and western borders. His conquests extended Parthian power north and west of Babylonia, parts of Mesopotamia it had not controlled before. He founded the city of Ctesiphon, near Babylon, and within several decades it became the new Parthian capital. This location in Mesopotamia helped link the Parthians to the great empires of the past. Ctesiphon was also a safer spot than the old capital in Hyrcania, which nomads could easily raid. The great king also strengthened ties with the Indo-Parthians, giving Parthia influence east of its own boundaries. Around 97 BCE, Mithridates II took control of Armenia, which had been mostly independent under the Seleucids. The great king had already kidnapped an Armenian prince, Tigranes, ca 140 to 55 BCE. Now Mithridates II had him installed as king of Armenia. Tigranes was the son-in-law of Mithridates VI Eupator, ca 132-63 B.C.E. Mithridates VI Eupator ruled Pontus, a kingdom in Asia Minor south of the Black Sea. The name Eupator is Greek for, of a good father. After the fall of the Achaemenid Empire, that region had kept some of its Persian culture, and also blended it with Hellenic culture. Mithridates II married a daughter of Tigranes, which cemented his alliance with Armenia. Then, to strengthen himself even further, he formed an alliance with Tigranes' father-in-law, Mithridates VI Eupator. Around the same time, the Romans and Parthians made their first diplomatic contact. By now Rome had replaced Greece as the dominant power in the Mediterranean. In 96 BCE, the Roman general Sulla, 138 to 78 BCE, was in Asia Minor fighting the Pontians, Pontus. A Parthian diplomat met Sulla at the Euphrates River. The two men talked, and most likely reached an agreement that the Euphrates River would be the line that divided their political interests. But according to Plutarch in his Lives, Sulla treated the Parthians with vulgarity and ill-timed arrogance. Sulla gave the diplomat the same status as the leader of Cappadocia, which was a small kingdom in Asia Minor. Mithridates II believed a Parthian should have received better treatment and took Sulla's action as an insult. He executed the diplomat for tolerating it. In the years to come, Rome and Parthia were destined to clash over lands they both wanted to control: Mesopotamia and Armenia. After Mithridates II died in ca 87 BCE, several kings who were not Arsaces managed to rule Parthia for a time. The Arsaces returned to power in 70 BCE, when Phraates III, r. 70 to 57 BCE, took the throne. By this time, both Armenia and Pontus were in conflict with Rome. In 69 BCE, Mithridates VI Eupator and Tigranes asked Phraates to help them battle the Romans. At the same time, the Romans told Phraates to stay out of the conflict. Phraates remained neutral, and Rome defeated Mithridates VI Eupator and Tigranes. The Battle of Carrhae. At this time, the Roman general in Asia Minor and Mesopotamia was Lucullus, ca 117 ca 56 BCE. After his defeat of Armenia and Pontus, he thought about breaking the old agreement that Rome would not cross the Euphrates River. As Plutarch writes in his Lives, the general was drawn to the idea of making his way, unvanquished, undefeated and victorious, through three of the greatest empires under the sun. His troops, however, refused to go farther east. War with Parthia would have to wait. In 66 BCE, Pompey, another Roman general, sent troops east across the Euphrates River. King Phraates asked the Romans to obey their agreement not to cross, and diplomacy ended the problem. Still, as modern historians beat Dignas and Engelbert Winter write in Rome and Persia in late Arsaces antiquity, Rome was convinced of its political, military-cultural superiority over the East. A few years later, the Arsaces of Parthia had family struggles for power that mirrored the conflicts the Achaemenids sometimes faced. Around 57 BCE, Phraates' sons Orodes II and Mithridates II killed their father. The two brothers then battled one another for power. Orodes' forces were finally able to capture Mithridates in 55 BCE. Justin wrote that Mithridates trusted his brother would treat him well. Instead, Orodes, contemplating him rather as an enemy than a brother, ordered him to be put to death before his face. By this time, a Roman army led by Crassus, ca 115 to 53 BCE, was on its way from Syria. Crassus may have heard reports of Mithridates' early success and wanted to help him fight his brother. Or perhaps he thought the rebellion put Orodes in a weak position and he would not be able to defend his kingdom. In either case, Crassus wanted to invade Parthia for the glory and wealth it would bring him. Crassus began his attack in 54 BCE by crossing the Euphrates River and taking control of lands in northern Mesopotamia. He returned to Syria for the winter to gather more troops, then headed back to Babylon and the nearby Seleucia in the spring of 53 BCE. Crassus was confident he could take Babylon and the nearby city of Seleucia. But a Parthian diplomat warned him not to be so sure. As quoted by the ancient Roman historian Cassius Dio, ca 150, ca 235 CE, in his Roman history, the Parthian held out the palm of his hand Tori, and said, "Sooner will hair grow here than you shall reach Seleucia." While Crassus built his army and prepared to cross the Euphrates again, Orodes assembled his own forces. As in the days of the Achaemenids, the cavalry was the heart of the Persian army. Light cavalry with archers rode into battle first, followed by the heavily armored cavalry that rode with long lances. Their horses wore armor too, plates of bronze and steel. When the Roman soldiers heard about the Parthians' heavy armor and powerful weapons, Plutarch said in his Lives that they lost their courage. Now, contrary to their hopes, they were led to expect a struggle and great peril. The Parthians relied mostly on their cavalry, trying to avoid hand-to-hand combat. The Romans, like the Greeks before them, counted on their infantry in close combat to defeat their enemies. One Parthian battle tactic was to have the light cavalry pull away from the enemy, as if they were leaving the battle. Then, the archers would fire as they rode away, giving the enemy no chance to return fire. The Parthians may have adapted this tactic from the Medes or Scythians, and it became known as a Parthian shot. In 53 BCE, Orodes led his army against the Romans. The two armies met near the city of Carrhae, also known as Haran, in what is now southeast Turkey. Orodes had 1,000 heavy cavalry and 9,000 archers on horses. Behind them, 1,000 camels carried extra arrows and other supplies. His men faced up to 42,000 Roman soldiers and were heavily outnumbered. But the Romans proved to be no match for the Persian archers and cavalry. As night fell, the surviving Romans left their camp to seek shelter behind the city walls of Carrhae. After spending one night there, they began to retreat. About half the Roman soldiers had been killed in the fighting, and the Parthians took another 10,000 prisoner. Modern historian A.D.H. Bivar, writing in the Cambridge History of Iran, says the defeat showed Parthia as a world power equal, if not superior, to Rome. With the victory, the Euphrates River was now the firm boundary between the Roman and Persian worlds. Armenia again promised its loyalty to the Parthians. End of episode 7. Thank you for watching.